It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the movies of May 28th, 1993. Five movies to get to, some pretty big movies, actually. We're going to delve into all of them, and so let's not waste any more time. Let's just jump on into it. And we'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is Sylvester Stallone in the mountain climbing action thriller, Cliffhanger. So for Sylvester Stallone, Cliffhanger was actually kind of a big deal for him because he had had a couple of movies that had backfired badly at the box office in between 1990, 1991, and 1992. Stuff like Rocky 5, I should say. Rocky 5 was not a big hit. Oscar, even though that was a pretty funny movie, did not do well. Stop when My Mom Will Shoot was a huge failure for him. So this was kind of a nice return to form for him, and did prove to be a big success. It made over $250 million worldwide, and honestly, like, you can see why, because it is a pretty fun and pretty damn good action movie. Like, it's a fun movie just for the concept alone. You have Sylvester Stallone playing this climber, and so you have these action sequences, that take place on the snowy mountain as he's trying to get to face off the bad guy in this movie, played by John Lithgow, who has a brilliantly over the top performance in this, and the movie is just a ton of fun all around. Like, the ways they create these action sequences on these snowy mountains are amazing, and you can definitely tell a lot of these scenes were done practically, and it feels like it actually happened. Unlike a lot of action movies we get today, but it's just a ton of fun all around. It's Renny Harlin, who also did Die Hard 2, which was also a movie that was very flawed, but a ton of fun regardless. And this movie definitely feels like it's on that same path. Like, there's a lot of great action sequences here. The climax of the movie where Stallone faces Lithgow is a ton of fun. You get to see Michael Rooker without his mustache and all that. It's amazing how Michael Rooker looks when he has like a plainly clean face. It's not often you get to see it, and you get to see it here. You got Janine Turner from Northern Exposure, which was a big hit at the time. And like I said, man, the action sequences in this movie were just a ton of fun to watch. They're the reason why this movie remains such a great movie over 30 years later. It's just a movie that every time it's on, you go back to it and you just have a great time watching it. It's just such a wonderfully made movie. So over the top, so very fun. It just works on so many levels. It's a movie that I can watch over and over again, never get tired of it. It's one of Stallone's best action movies, in my opinion. Cliffhanger, just a great movie. If you haven't seen it, please check it out. You are definitely doing yourself a huge disservice by not checking it out. With that said, though, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Whoopi Goldberg and Ted Danson in the comedy Made in America. So a couple of things of noteworthiness in this particular movie is that for Ted Danson, this was just coming a week after Cheers had ended, which, of course, Cheers ran for 11 seasons, and this was kind of the start of the post-Cheers career for Ted Danson, to see if he could have a successful movie career, because he'd have a couple of movies like this. I don't think a lot of them didn't really do so well. I think this one did okay, but also of note, this was the movie where Ted Danson met Whoopi Goldberg. They were together for a long time in the 1990s, and this was I think this was the movie that they met each other on. I could be completely wrong in that, but considering that they were together at this time, it wouldn't surprise me. You also have some notable names in here. Neil Long, who would later become known for starring in the films like The Best Man, Big Mama's House. Jennifer Tilly, of course, from the Child's Play movies. Will Smith in his second film role, which is kind of where this is the movie where his career kind of took off after this, his film career at least. And it's directed by Richard Benjamin. Richard Benjamin, of course, is the director behind such movies as Mermaids, Downtown, My Stepmother's an Alien, The Money Pit, City Heat, and also I think Michael Douglas actually produced this one too. Yeah, he was a producer on this one. I didn't know about. Which, as far as the movie itself goes, it's okay. It's nothing really all that exciting. It's nothing really all that hilarious, but it's a nicely made movie. I think you can see why there's some good chemistry between Danson and Goldberg. I think the rest of the cast in here is pretty good. There are a couple of decent funny moments here and there, but overall, it's a movie that is okay for what it is, but it's not something you'd want to watch on repeat over and over again. It's a movie that I saw it one time, and I was just kind of like, okay, I can definitely see the appeal of it. I can see why people would like it a lot, which I don't know if a lot of people do like it a lot, but I mean, it did decently well, so I guess it does have its fan base, but I'm glad I saw it once. I have no real need to see it again, but I thought it was just okay for what it was. I think it could have been a whole lot funnier. The concept, I think, could have been a whole lot better with a better script, but as it is, it's perfectly salvageable for what it is. It's a movie that watch it one time and then you really don't need to see it again another time. So anyway, that's Made in America. Now let's move on to the next movie, and it's the first ever video game adaptation of a. Let me rephrase that. The first movie based off of a video game, adapted from a video game. Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo in Super Mario Brothers. I mean, give this movie some credit. That trailer is actually pretty impressive, even though a lot of it doesn't really make sense to compare to the video game. Just the editing on that trailer, the music choice of I've Got the Power, and then the scenes with Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo as Mario and Luigi. If I was old enough to see this movie back then, I would have been very excited to see this movie. But of course, you can kind of tell a lot of the problems from this movie in particular from the legacy it's had. It's a movie that doesn't really. It's a lackluster plot. The tone of it is all over the place. It doesn't really feel like the video game. It has no faithfulness to the video game in most parts of it, except for the casting, which will lead me to some of the good things about this movie, because there are things about this movie that I have come to really appreciate about this movie, and that is one of the things about the casting of Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo. Pretty good casting overall here. I think that's really one of the stronger elements of this movie, is the casting of those two. Even somebody like Samantha Mathis playing Princess Daisy is not a bad casting choice. I just wish the character in particular these characters were much more in line with the video game. And Dennis Hopper's King Koopa is that's one of those ones where I really got to be like, yeah, you really missed the mark on that one. I mean, I know it would be really hard to make an actual live-action King Koopa in 1993, but you could have done it a lot better than what they did in this movie here. They didn't even try to make Dennis Hopper look anywhere close to King Koopa, and yeah, it's just one of those things where, yeah, it's not very good, but it's not a very good performance, but yeah, I'm not gonna lie, there are moments in here where he does make me laugh, like some of the line readings he's giving, like "ba-bomb" and when he's just going "monkey," like stuff like that. Little things like that are kind of funny, but I mean, for the most part, the movie does look visually pleasing, even though it doesn't really fit the tone of the video games at all. The overall, like the art, like the background work, the cinematography, it's very unique and very interesting. Like it is like, I think Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of the Mario games, pretty much said it best. Like, there's an effort being put in here, but it feels like they're trying too hard to replicate the games without even trying. Instead of being entertaining on its own, which he's very much right on that. But yeah, there really is not a whole lot of faithfulness to this, except in certain elements to it. Overall, it's a bad movie, but I will give it credit that it does have merits to it that make it kind of watchable. Like, I think if a better script, if a better idea of making something more faithful to the video games came out of this, they would have had something really special to it. But yeah, overall, it is what it is. It's one of the more notorious video game failures, but there are elements about it that make it slightly worth watching. And the hope is that with this new Mario Brothers movie that's coming out in theaters next year by Universal and Illumination, which looks very much in tone with what you expect from the video games, we'll get a better Mario movie than that. But for this movie in particular, I'll say it's okay, but it's definitely a major misfire in a number of areas. It's one of those, I even go as far as to say it's maybe a so bad it's good type of movie, and probably the best way to really describe it is that. So yeah, there was a lot they could have done here, but overall, it's just a movie that's not really great. But I've seen a lot worse. There's been a far worse video game adaptations than this movie, and we've gotten those since this movie came out. So you got to take that for what it is. So that's my thoughts on the Super Mario Brothers movie of '93. Let's move on to the next movie, and that is Menace to Society. So coming a couple of years after John Singleton broke out with Boys in the Hood, and Mario Van Peebles broke out with New Jack City. Almost got those two reversed. Here we have the Hughes brothers breaking out with their first film, Menace to Society, which on paper it definitely looks very similar to stuff like Boys in the Hood, New Jack City, Blood In, Blood Out, Juice, some of these other movies that we've talked about that have come out over the last couple of years. But to this movie's credit, though, I got to give it a lot of credit for some of the stuff that it did. Mostly the portrayal of the main character of the film, Kane Lawson, played by Tyron Turner. And I like the idea that the movie doesn't really give him one side to be on. It's usually in movies you're either the good guy or the bad guy. And in this situation, it's kind of a mix of both. That makes you it makes you think about, if you were in the same situation, what would you do in the same situation? And that's what I really like about this movie, is that it's so ambiguous about how to take this main character and all of his, in the situations he finds himself in. You got a great cast overall. Jada Pinkett's in here, Bill Duke, Charles S. Dutton's in this movie, and it does have a nice visual style that surprisingly is very different compared to something like Boys in the Hood. Like, it really does try to. It really looks on that trailer alone, it looks very similar, but at the same time, it is doing a lot of stuff that's very different from other movies of its type, and that's what I really appreciate about this movie. You can definitely tell that the Hughes brothers, and with the way the Hughes brothers make this movie, they have their own style that they put to this type of a story, and it works really well. I think it works very well. It's a movie that really has held up well over time, honestly. It's a movie that could have easily been dated, but sadly, it's a story that still is prevalent even by today's standards, and it's a very well-made film. Good performances, good drama, good writing overall, and the Hughes brothers really show their potential as great filmmakers, as they would go on to show in years to come. Yeah. So overall, Menace to Society is a really good movie. Another one that, if you haven't seen it yet, you're probably doing yourself a major disservice by doing so. It's really one of the best films to come out of '93, honestly. So that's Menace to Society. Now let's move on to the last movie that we have here, and that is Filmation's Happily Ever After. Okay, so there's a couple things here we definitely need to address here. First of all, it's not a good sign when your copyright date on your title screen is 1990, and this movie came out in 1993. And not even that, this movie had been in the works for 4 years prior to that, in 1986. It started work in 86, and then didn't get completed until 1988. Was released in the Philippines in 1989. So between the Philippines release and this release, it was 4 years in between those releases. So you could definitely tell that they knew that this movie was not going to do well at all. And what's funny is that Filmation actually had a plan to create DVD direct-to-video sequels to popular Disney motion pictures, and this was one of them. And the other one that they actually did was Pinocchio and the Emperor of the Night, which also went to theaters. That was in 1987. But they never really went anywhere, and honestly, Good Times beat them to it in the 1990s by doing pretty much that. But just from that trailer alone, you could just see so much that's just their effort. The effort is there in the animation at points, but you can definitely tell it's Filmation. You can tell it's Filmation trying to be Disney animation. You can even tell that it's Filmation trying to knock off other animation studios at the time, like Warner Brothers. You can see a little bit of Warner Brothers animation in there, but yeah, this was a mess of a film, and they actually thought that this movie was going to be one of the biggest hits of the year. Like, this was another one of those things like Carnosaur, where they tried to get it out ahead of a competition because Disney was going to re-release Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs that summer as well, and they spent $10 million advertising this movie, and this film didn't even make two. Is a any as a fourth of what is it? A fifth of that, I should say. I'm trying to do math on the spot here, but didn't even make a fifth of that money back on the opening weekend. It only made $1.8 million in its opening weekend, a 4-day opening weekend, and after a month, it barely crossed $3 million, and that was just amazing. And sure enough, turns out that the president of the company that released this movie was found guilty of defrauding investors, and they filed for bankruptcy not but a few weeks after the movie came out. So that should really tell you something about how much they were sure that this movie was going to do well. And like listen, you can get Mark Elliott to do his Disney trailer voice on other trailers, but trying to call this the entertainment event you'll never forget, come on, man. Like even he had to look at this and go, "You got to be freaking kidding me." But yeah, the movie just wasn't very good. You could definitely tell the animation was trying to do something for a bigger screen adaptation. Like, it doesn't show a whole lot there, but there's definitely brief flashes of it's a promise there, brief flashes of something like, okay, there's gonna be, okay, I can definitely see where the animation could be really good, but it just didn't work. And just just the whole idea that just it really follows the Disney formula. Let's get in this talented voice cast on board here. We've got Irene Cara, which, by the way, as I'm recording this, she recently passed away. So rest in peace, Irene Cara. I wish I could be talking about a better movie than this one, but I'll give her credit though. She is one of the few things about this movie that is at least enjoyable. She definitely plays Snow White pretty well. You got Malcolm McDowell as the villain, Phyllis Diller, Dom DeLuise, Carol Channing, Zsa Zsa Gabor, Linda Gary, Sally Kellerman, Tracy Ullman, Ed Asner is in here. Good cast overall, but they're just not really given a whole lot of good material to work with here, and it really is what it is from from the trailer and the posters and the marketing alone. It's just a straight up Disney knockoff, and they're not even trying to hide it. Like, it's not a very good movie at all. There's brief flashes of promise there, but it just didn't work. It's a movie that was widely forgotten almost immediately after it came out, and you could kind of tell why. So there you go. That's Happily Ever After for you. And so on that note, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. Next time we meet, we'll jump into June 1993 with 3 movies. Rebecca De Mornay and Don Johnson in the thriller Guilty of Sin, Michael J. Fox in Life with Mikey, and The Music of Chance. So 3 movies to look at next time around. We'll jump into those on the next episode. But until then, thank you very much for watching. And as always, if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And I will see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. And until then, as always, take care.